Good afternoon. I'd like to call the meeting of the Planning Commission to order. It is Thursday, February 25th, 2001 at 4:30. First item on the agenda is a public meeting notice. The Planning Commission will conduct their meeting by teleconference pursuant to the authority of the Minnesota Statute 13D.021 due to the circumstances of the coronavirus. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the January 28th meeting. Has everyone read the minutes? And do I have a motion? Changes?
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Okay. Did you get that, Dave? All in favor of approval?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes have been approved. The next is a public hearing to consider the application of Jason Kletcher requesting a variance from the city code to allow a 20 by 22-foot garage addition to be constructed 3 feet from the side property line on the property legally described as Lot 9, Block 181 south of Center Street. The street address is 12 North Payne Street. Staff report.
Okay. I just want to inform the Planning Commission as we go through this staff report, you'll notice there's a couple changes than what you have normally seen in the past. And what we've done for these variance requests is actually incorporated the criteria that's listed on the back of the variance application. And then we also had staff's response to that part of the criteria. So you'll see that in the staff report. So the applicant for this variance request is Jason Kletcher. He is also the property owner. Legal description is Lot 9, Block 181, north of Center Street. Street address is 12 North Payne Street. This property is generally located just north of Center Street and east of Payne Street. Deadline for this decision, or the decision on this variance request, is April 6th, 2021. The comprehensive plan designates the land use in this area to be low-density residential, and it is surrounded by low-density residential to the north, south, east, and west. This property is zoned R2, the single and two-family residence district, and it is surrounded by the R2 to the north, south, east, and west. Currently, this site has a single-family home with a detached garage on it. Surrounding this property are other single-family homes to the north, south, east, and west. Public hearing notice was published in the Journal on February 13th, 2021, and to date we have not received any comments on this request. To describe the project, the property owner is proposing to construct a 20 by 22 garage addition on their property 3 feet from the side or north property line. I should note, since this staff report went out to the Planning Commission, the applicant has contacted us and asked if he could change the dimensions of the building to be 24 by 22. And that extra 4 feet he is proposing will go closer to his house and maintain the same setback of 3 feet from that side property line. There is an existing 14 by 22-foot garage addition on the property that was built in 1920. The property owner has indicated that the existing garage is in good condition and he would prefer to add to the existing garage rather than removing that building and constructing a new building. The addition would maintain the distance from the north property line, which is 3 feet, and be in line with the existing garage on the property. The addition would be constructed, like I said, towards his home. City Code setback requirements. Section 9.07, subdivision 5C2 states, whenever a lot of record at the date of this chapter has a width of less than 65 feet, the side yard on each side of a building may be reduced to a width of not less than 5 feet. So our comment on that is this lot is 50 feet by 165 feet long. So going through the variance criteria and staff analysis, the first first variance criteria asked on the application is, in your opinion, is the variance in harmony with the purposes and intent of Chapter 9? Why or why not? Staff's comment is that the applicant is proposing to construct a garage addition for residential purposes on this property, and detached garages up to 1,000 square feet inside dimension for residential uses are allowed on lots per the city zoning ordinance. The proposed addition would bring the total size of his detached garage to 836 square feet. Criteria number 2, in your opinion, is the variance request consistent with the city's comprehensive plan? My comment was that the city's comprehensive plan designates this property as low-density residential, and the applicant's proposal to construct a residential garage addition on a residential property is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Number 3, in your opinion, does the proposal put the property to use in a reasonable manner? My comment was constructing a garage addition on a residential lot is a reasonable use of the property. And then there is there's the existence of a 14 by 22 foot garage on the property that was constructed in 1920. In 1920, there were no city zoning or setback requirements. The neighboring property to the north has an existing storage shed that is either on the property line or very close to the property line, and you can see that in attachment 5 on the ground level photos. Fourth criteria is that, in your opinion, are there circumstances unique to this property that necessitate the need for a variance? My comment was, in the original plat of New Ulm, many of the lots in the grid section of the community were designed to be 50 foot by 165 foot long. This lot is not unique to this section of New Ulm. Number 5, in your opinion, are there circumstances unique to this property that necessitate a variance that were not created by the landowner? My comment was that the existing garage on the property was not constructed by the current landowner. The property owner is proposing to add an addition to an existing garage that was constructed closer than 5 foot than the required 5 foot minimum requirement for the side yard setback. The property owner is proposing to maintain the setback of the existing building, which is 3 feet from that side property line. Number 6, in your opinion, will the variance maintain the essential character of the neighborhood? My comment was that the proposed addition is proposed to match the house in color and material and will not change the essential character of the neighborhood. The last criteria is, in your opinion, do economic conditions alone constitute a practical difficulty or reason for the variance? My comment was that it has not been indicated to staff that the reasoning for the proposed garage addition is due to economic purposes or being proposed in its location because of economic circumstances. So those were the criteria, and then staff's response to them. The applicant also responds to that criteria, and that is going to be found in attachment 1 of the variance application. So I have 2 listed alternative actions. 1 is could choose not to reduce the side yard setback, or 2, lessen the variance amount. For supporting data, we have attachment 1, which is the variance application. Attachment 2 is a map showing the location of the property. Attachment 3 is a zoning map. Attachment 4 is a site plan. And attachment 5 are the ground level photos. Staff would recommend approval for the variance for the following reasons. 1, the garage is an addition to an existing building that was constructed in 1920 and will go no closer than the existing garage on the site. 2, the placement of this garage does not change the essential character of the neighborhood, as the site will continue to be used for residential purposes. And 3, economic conditions alone were not the basis for requesting a variance to construct this garage addition. We would recommend 2 conditions if this variance were to be approved. 1 would be that the applicant shall locate the property boundaries and verify the location of the proposed addition on the site with city staff prior to the placement of the building. And 2, the applicant shall install a 1-hour fire protection on the wall of the garage addition and existing garage abutting the north property line. And then I had two potential motions that I set in front of each one of you. one approving and one denying the request. The applicant is here, and I'm sure would be willing to ask any questions you might have for him. And that concludes the staff report.
Madam Chair, a question. The public hearing notice that was published in the Journal, did it say that the building addition was to be 20 by 22?
Yep.
Okay, then the only action that the commission can take at today's meeting is for an addition of that size. We cannot increase the size of the request.
That was my
Obviously, you
question
can
also.
decrease it, but we can't increase it. The only other option is that, to, reapply, at that, at those dimensions.
So withdraw today's proposal and then resubmit it all over again would be the option, is what you're saying, is just?
Well, it's really up
Or
to
we
what,
could approve
it's up
it
to what
today
the
and then they
applicant.
could return and make another motion, right?
I think it probably works best to have them submit what they want to do, and so that we take care of it all at one time. We've recently have gone through a two-part process, and it was very confusing, I think, so.
We could accept it at this, and if he wanted to, then he would have to reapply either way. Correct.
Right.
Are there any other comments or questions? Does the applicant want to approach the mic to,
If you want to ask any questions, I would go up to the microphone.
his questions or comments? Please introduce yourself and state your name and address.
I am Jason Kletcher. Do I need to turn this on, or is it on already?
It should be on.
12 North Main Street, New Ulm.
Okay.
I guess I'm not really understanding. I mean, the fact that I'm trying to add onto the garage 3 feet from the setback, or from the property line, doesn't change whether that addition is 20 feet or 24 feet. So I'm a little fuzzy about the need to reapply,
I believe
because
it's,
that setback isn't changing. I'm not asking to change from a 3-foot setback to a 2-foot.
Right, no, it's, I think Mr. Snowbrick commented is that our limitation is that we can only go with the original motion as it was publicly stated. And so for us to proceed today, you have to go back to your original plan. And in order for us to proceed with your new dimensions, you would have to recreate and resubmit the entire proposal over so that when it goes into the public record, the new dimensions are correct. So basically, it's has nothing to do with the setback. It has everything to do with the increased dimension because of the public record that has already been set.
That is correct.
Okay. So really, it's a decision for you to make, but I'm gonna guess that there's another fee that has to be paid to get that extra addition.
Yeah. We can take action on his request as originally submitted.
correct.
If he wants to change the size of the addition, that requires, a new process.
An additional action.
Yes.
Okay.
Understood?
Okay. Do you want us to proceed with this action?
I think that would be a reasonable thing to do, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Or would you prefer to reapply with the greater dimension?
Well, if I reapply, it'll be another application fee, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I would prefer to proceed with the current plan then,
Okay.
20 by 24?
yes.
22 by,
20 by
20.
22 by 20.
okay.
I got just a question for the sake of the record is, which came first, the construction of the garage in 1920 or the code that talks about the setback? Because clearly, you can see that the neighbor's got his shed there, this garage has been there since 1920, so you know, which one actually, was the building in place before the code showed up, or was the code in place before the building?
Well, the first evidence of an ordinance that was regulating building placement was in 1935. And what those precise standards were, I couldn't tell you. The standards that we currently use have been in place since 1968.
All right. So the existing structure has grandfathered itself beyond the measurement, so in my, just for my sake, the setback issue is a mute issue because it's been, the building has existed longer than the code has. So, and you're not, you're gonna maintain that same integrity, so really it becomes a mute issue for me.
Right, and it has no effect whatsoever on the neighbor's use or enjoyment of their property or their visibility or sight lines. Just the way this project lies, it won't affect anybody adversely. So I don't think there's any concern there.
Right, 'cause
And interestingly enough, the neighbor on the other side of my property, which it does not even show on these diagrams, they're within the 5 feet as well of my property line for their garage. So on both sides of me, I'm pinched, you know, and it is what it is, right?
Right.
We're not gonna change that, but, so.
Are there any other questions? Does anyone have any more comments?
I'm gonna just chime in a little. You know, we did a shed here a couple of years ago that was within 1 foot, and they were making an addition and staying within the same boundary of it. And, you know, if city staff doesn't feel it's any issues, you know, I support the fact that they recommended a firewall. That was, you know, in the documentation, and they're, you know, I'm okay with it. You know, but if he wants to go a little bit bigger, we have to make it correct in the paper, in the public hearing, and
Right.
go from
right.
there,
Yeah.
so. And it's a, you know, it's a unique situation.
So
Anyone?
just so I understand this correctly now,
Correct.
if I decide I want to go another 4 feet and I resubmit another application, we go through this process all over again, right?
Correct.
And that's all doable, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything to say, or do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
With conditions? Staff recommend 2 conditions in them.
Oh, with the conditions for the, okay, right.
I'll
With
second that.
conditions, yes.
Second with conditions. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You have a 20 by 22 foot addition that you can put on.
Thank you.
Thank you for appearing.
Thanks, Jason.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the public hearing to consider the application of Paul and Colleen Baranek requesting a variance from the city to allow a 28 by 36 foot storage shed to be constructed 10 feet from the property, from the front yard property line on the property illegally described as Lot 6, Block 1, Lombricks, First Edition. The street address is 1017 South Ridge Road. Staff report?
All right, the applicant for this variance is Paul and Colleen Bernick. They are also the property owners. The legal description is Lot 6, Block 1, Lombricks, First Edition. Street address is 1017 Southridge Road. The property is generally located south of 10th South Street and northeast of Southridge Road. The deadline for the decision on this variance is April 9th, 2021. Comprehensive plan designates this area as low-density residential. The surrounding land use designation is also low-density residential to the north, south, east, and west. This property is zoned R1, the single-family residence district, and the surrounding zoning is also R1 to the north, south, east, and west. Currently, this site has a single-family home on it, and surrounding this property are also single-family homes to the north, south, east, and west. Notice was published in the Journal on February 13th, 2021, and when the staff report went out, there were no comments. We did receive a phone call today with the person requesting that the storage shed match in design, color, and roofing materials the same as the house. That was their concern regarding this request. To describe this project, the property owners are proposing to construct a 28 by 36 foot storage shed on their property 10 feet from the front or north property line abutting 10th Street South. The front yard setback in the R1 zoning district is 30 feet. The entrance to the property is located in a cul-de-sac along Southridge Road with the back of the property along 10th Street South. Because this property is abutting two streets, it therefore has two front yard setback areas, one along Southridge Road and then one along 10th Street South. The side yard setback in the R1 zoning district is 10 feet, and the applicant would meet this side yard setback zoning requirement. Total lot size of this property is approximately 13,500 square feet in size, and has a steep hillside on the north and northeast side of the property, and you can see that on attachment 5. The neighboring house to the south is approximately 15 feet from the Bernick's home, so from outside wall of the neighbor's property to the outside wall of Bernick's house is approximately 15 feet. The distance between the retaining wall north of Bernick's home and their house is approximately 14 feet. The applicant has stated that there is not enough room to get earth-moving equipment, cement trucks, or dump trucks between their home and the neighbor's home, or in between their home and the retaining wall, to construct the storage shed in their backyard. The applicant did say that they had considered placing the building to the northeast of their home, but they do not have enough space to access this portion of the yard to prepare the site or construction of the structure. So with regard to city code setback requirements, section 9.06 subdivision 5 B1 states that there shall be a front yard having a depth of not less than 30 feet unless 50% or more of the frontage on the same side of the street between two intersecting streets is improved with dwellings that have observed a lesser depth of front yard, in which instance no new dwelling or portion thereof shall project beyond a straight line drawn between the front building lines of the dwellings upon either side of the proposed structure. Or if there be dwellings upon only one side, then beyond a line determined by the average setbacks of dwelling on that block. There aren't any along this section, so that part of the code really doesn't allow any variance in the front yard setback. I should note that there are two definitions that are important in our city code regarding this request. One is the term double frontage lot, and that means an interior lot having frontage on two streets. So this would be a double frontage lot. And then the second one is the term front yard, which means the yard extending across the front of a lot between the side yard lines and line between the front street line of the lot and the nearest line of the building. So that just describes that front yard setback area that we have on properties. So my comment to that is that this property does have two front yard setback areas, one on Southridge Road and then the second front yard setback area on 10th Street South. So I will go through the variance criteria and then staff's analysis of that criteria. First one is, in your opinion, is the variance in harmony with the purposes and intent of Chapter 9? Why or why not? My comment is that the applicant is proposing to construct a detached storage shed for residential purposes on residential property. Detached storage structure is up to 1,000 square feet. Again, that's the inside dimension of the structure. For residential uses are allowed on residential lots per the city zoning ordinance. 2, in your opinion, is the variance request consistent with the city's comprehensive plan? My comment is the comprehensive plan designates this property as low-density residential. The applicant proposes to construct a residential detached storage shed on a residential property that would be consistent with the comprehensive plan. 3, in your opinion, does the proposal put the property to use in a reasonable manner? My comment was that constructing a detached storage shed on a residential lot is a reasonable use of the property and done on many residential lots in New Ulm. This property has 2 front yard setback areas, one on Southridge Road and one on 10th Street South. Normally, when a property has 2 front yard setback areas, it is because it's located at a street intersection. In the R1 zoning district, a corner lot has 2 front yard setback areas per the city code 9.06 subdivision 5B2. This property is not located at a street intersection, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this property is unique. It just, its configuration is different. Number 4, in your opinion, are there circumstances unique to this property that necessitate the need for a variance? My comment was this property does have a steep slope, generally running along the north property line. This steep slope does reduce the amount of buildable space on the property, and the applicant has told staff that the area directly behind the house was considered, but getting any equipment or building materials to that location would be infeasible. Number 5, in your opinion, are there circumstances unique to this property that necessitate a variance that were not created by the landowner? My comment was this property does have a steep slope, again, running on the north property line, and it reduces the buildable area. And the applicant has told staff, again, that he's considered the area behind his house, but would have trouble getting materials or equipment back there. The steep slope wasn't created by the property owner. In fact, the property owner installed a retaining wall to probably reduce that slope on the north property line. Number 6, in your opinion, will the variance maintain the essential character of the neighborhood? My comment was the proposed storage shed would match the house in color and material and would not change the essential character of the neighborhood. Number 7, in your opinion, do economic conditions alone constitute a practical difficulty or reason for this variance? My comment is it hasn't been indicated to staff that the reasoning for the proposed storage shed is for economic purposes or being proposed in this location because of economic circumstances. I do list 2 alternative actions. One would be to not reduce the front yard setback, or 2, to lessen the variance amount. There are a number of attachments, 6 attachments. Number 1 is the variance application. Number 2 is the map showing the location of the property. 3 is the zoning map. 4 is the site plan. 5 is the contour map. And then 6 are the ground level photographs. Staff recommendation. Staff would recommend approval of the variance for the following reasons. 1, this site has a steep slope running along the north property line and a minimal space between the home and the neighboring home to access the rear of the property. If there were not a steep slope, the applicant would be able to construct the building on the property that meets the setback requirements. 2, the placement of this storage building does not change the essential character of the neighborhood, as this site will continue to be used for residential purposes. 3, economic conditions were not a factor in determining the location of the proposed storage shed. So there are a number of conditions we would request if this were to be considered for approval. 1 would be the applicant shall locate the property boundaries and verify the location of the proposed building on the site with city staff prior to the placement of the building. And I believe he actually has had that staked out and all the property lines are located now. 2, the applicant shall not access the storage shed from 10th Street South right-of-way. 3, the applicant shall install a vegetative screening on the property to reduce the view of the building from 10th Street South. That is not in your packet. This was an additional. This is an additional condition that staff would like to offer up for this variance request.
Okay, my question is, what screening are you recommending?
Vegetative screening. So, right.
Thank you.
And then lastly, the last condition would be that there are no outdoor storage of materials around the building location. And then I had two potential motions, one for approval and one for the denial of the variance request. And the applicant is present, and I'm sure would be willing to take your questions if you had them.
Okay. I have a couple questions for him.
For Mr. Baronic?
Hi,
State
Paul
your
Bernick, 1017 South Ridge Road, New Ulm, Minnesota.
Paul, are you comfortable with the conditions that city staff had stated about adding vegetation? Do you understand what?
Exactly, would that be shrubbery planted, or I'm not quite,
You can, John, can you,
Paul, I think what we
Along
would be,
10th.
what we would be looking for is something to reduce seeing that building from 10th. So it might be something like evergreens or something to block that view. And we can work, staff can work with you on that,
Sure.
to help you with that.
I'd be happy with doing that. I mean, to make that like a line there along 10th. Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
that was my question, Paul, just that you understand what staff
Sure.
was asking and that you're on the same page.
Sure.
And then, John, you also had stated that we had a call in today
Yes.
in regards to it, and an individual was asking for similar color and style of siding and roofing materials.
Mhm.
Can you maybe elaborate on that? Are we obligated to follow guidelines like that in our city? Or can Mr. Baranek choose his or color of choice and things?
Well, currently in place, we don't have that requirement. But the applicant Paul has indicated to us that it would be matching the home
Okay.
in both color and shingles as well.
Yes, my plan was I'll put on the same color as my house with horizontal steel or vinyl siding, and it will have a shingled roof is what I've had bid out, so it would match the entire neighborhood. And it'll be landscaped, and I plan to have a brick front to it.
So you're building it essentially to match with the house? Okay. David,
Yeah,
did you?
no, I was just going to comment that I'm familiar with other communities where this would be a standard requirement, that if you're building something, into a setback area or a new structure that requires a variance, they require that you match the existing structure. So that's not unusual.
Clarifying question?
Yeah,
Did you have a question?
those are my questions, and I just
Okay.
making sure that we're here and trying to work with you as
appreciate
a,
that.
a
Yep.
homeowner and that you have no surprises.
And if you need to see a plan, I do have one of what it's kind of going to look like, but if I
That
could.
would be a difficult corner to put a building on, and I too had questions about the type of screening that he could put up, because are we essentially requesting that he put screening? It's a wooded area on that side of, so,
With that setback that we're requiring, there should be space for something like evergreens or even something like red osier dogwood, something that would grow up.
it has to be totally maintenance-free, basically, correct?
I mean, that, as a property owner, I would,
That area is not gonna see a whole lot of daylight, so whatever grows there has to be growing in shade,
Yeah.
cause that might see about 2 hours of sunlight a day, and that'll be it. John, I had a question relative to your comment about access from 10 South. Would you repeat that, please?
Sure, so talking with the city engineering department, they would not like any curb cuts on 10th Street South. Okay, so they don't want the property owner accessing that storage shed from 10th. Okay, doesn't mean that he can't come down from his property, come to the back, come down through his property and enter the backside of his building. But they don't want to have any curb cuts in
No
that.
driveway.
Right, for a driveway to enter that building on 10th.
Backing a truck or a trailer up from 10th or accessing it that way to get to the shed.
Okay, well, and if you look at the pictures, that's a considerable drop. That's got to be at least 30, 40 feet between where your property is on top and where this shed's going to be down below, right?
It is a
And-
considerable,
And I'm not so, I guess the request by the city for no curb cuts, why? What is their impetus to saying we don't want curb cuts on that? Because I'm just curious, why don't they want it to curb cut?
Well, I would say because of the speed of vehicles coming up the hill and all of a sudden having traffic right in the middle of that area, plus traffic coming from Summit down, depending upon, again, on speed. I think that isn't a good place where you're going to want to have a vehicle in the middle of the street, for an extended period of time.
Okay. What's your, hearing that, how does that sound, or how do you propose, I mean, what are you gonna put in this shed? I'm just curious, because.
it is gonna be, I do a lot of antiques, it's not gonna be vehicles.
Shed, residential, it's not gonna bother you that are you guys, and I've been noticing, because I live up in that area, between you and your neighbor, and if you look in the bottom right picture of you can see, over time, there's been a very, concerted effort to clear brush and to open and expand that space, and it almost looks like you could create a little drivable between you and your neighbor. And I suppose that's maybe on your neighbor's property, but I wouldn't doubt if he'll show up here in a amount of time and say, I want to put a shed over there too. And then he and I can both drive down the road we're gonna put in there, which would make sense if we're not gonna allow curb cuts on 10th Street. I just can't imagine that a detached garage that's not the main garage for the household would create that much traffic or that much concern. I understand, I think those have merits, but I also don't look at it as being, it's not like he's gonna be driving in and out of there 10 times a day, every day either. So I guess I don't have any, I was just curious, how do you access a shed when you gotta go around your property like that? So,
And I do have the access next to my retaining wall, which
Okay.
is enough property, and between me and the neighbor, an agreement with, it would probably be, the biggest thing would probably be a golf cart
right,
that would go down there.
sure.
My question to you, Dave, is you're almost saying like a curb cut would be possible? Are you fighting
I just
for
wanted to
me,
know what
or?
the city's why? I mean, I can understand the concern for traffic, but again, in this, it's understandable. It just seems to me that, I drove by there the other day, looked at it, I could visualize the shed. I could see the shed either being turned this way or turned that way on the property. I didn't think any of it would be unsightly. There's really nothing else there. I know on the opposite side of the road, there's been signs for sale. People have been trying to sell that lot. And so, I guess, I've just visualized that, okay, if something like that showed up there, it would look okay, especially if it was in line with the house. It would look good. I think it would be consistent. It wouldn't be a detractor for the neighborhood or the usage. And so that's why I was curious as to why the city would not want a curb cut. If it had to do with controlling runoff and rainwater, and that would create erosion if it got up over the curb, okay, that would make sense. But I just don't, I guess I'm still not, I wouldn't deny it because of the conditions, but I don't favor the city's recommendation for no curb cuts. I guess that's my 2 cents.
I
would
think
be in
if,
favor of curb cuts. I don't, unless there was a so what that,
I think if
really, I
you,
don't think the trafficability and what he plans to do with the property necessitates no curb cuts, is my.
I think if you look at the grade of the street, though, it's such that, it's, can cause speeds on either end of it. I also think you have to recommend that this is one of the means of access to the country club, which in and of itself, that's not a problem. But it also is a means of access to Flanders State Park, so there's the potential of people with trailers.
Right.
And if all of a sudden someone with a trailer turns a corner and there's something blocking the street, and it only has to happen once, for there to be a problem. So,
Right, but in both those cases, Dave, I would challenge you and say those two things are going up the hill. He's coming down the hill. So it's an egress relative versus getting stuck on the hill going up and needing to get a vehicle up. But I don't mean to debate that with you. I'm just saying, in my 2 cents, I can go, I'm in favor of this. I just don't see that the curb cuts really are a big deal. That's my 2 cents. I'll stop.
I guess I would comment on that and just, I guess I'm for not having a curb cut there, thinking about looking at the steepness of the hill, and not because necessarily he would create that much traffic, but you start with one, then is everyone along there going to want one, and then you're gonna run into issues, because that is I live near there, and it's a very busy road, both up and down, so that's something that would concern me if all of a sudden you have all these curb cuts, as well as it's a frequently walked hill as well, and so that would pose issues for me as well. But I wanted to ask John, can you clarify the last condition that you had mentioned of something being parked next to the shed? Can you say that again for me?
Right, so we wouldn't allow, or we'd place the condition that there be no outdoor storage of materials. Now, oftentimes, if you remember to the last couple of storage sheds that we had requests on, we had very similar condition that you couldn't store materials outside of that storage shed. So if you have the storage shed, you're not going to leave the car parked outside next to it or the lawnmower parked outside next to it. It should be stored in the storage shed, not outside.
And are you okay with that as a condition?
Totally fine with that. There'll be nothing on the outside of the building.
No jet skis
And
or
I'm
boats?
comfortable, I appreciate what you're doing with the curb cut. I'm comfortable without it.
Okay, very
And,
good.
but, maybe at some point in time, but I'm comfortable without the curb cut. I understand 10 South. I know how busy it is, and I work for the city, and we plow snow there, and I understand the safety of 10 South, so.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
I would add that in the past, when we've had some unique situations within our community, we've said no curb cuts in some, to proceed forward with some construction, with some storage sheds and things of nature, and that was the last one I know we did was probably on about the 1600 block, State Street South, and they had to come in from the alley or from the vacated street because of the busyness of the street, the side street. That one just rings a bell, but.
I guess I have to appreciate the city stating conditions right now and avoiding future problems with the property, or, too, so. Is there a motion? Hearing no other comments?
A motion to approve with conditions.
Second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Entertain a motion to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
Commission for your time.
Thank you for appearing.
just one thing, this is just a recommendation, so the city council still has to.
Correct. Yes.
know.
Okay. So it is at which council meeting?
March 2nd, next
Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Did you get that, Paul, or understand? Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay. This closes the public hearings. The next is 5-1, receive status report on the next neighborhood park project. Staff report.
Yes. As previously reported, you are all well aware that the Park and Rec Commission is currently reviewing existing and proposed park areas within the community and establishing a ranking system to help them identify the most appropriate location for the, and this is the term or phrase that they've been using, the next neighborhood park. And so the Planning Commission has also been participating in this review process. And the commission at its January 28th meeting reviewed information provided by the staff on this subject, and then each member identified the 3 park areas with their first choice receiving 3 points, the second choice 2 points, and the third choice 1 point. Those results were tabulated, and at the meeting, I think we only told you the names of the park and the order in which the top 3 finished. And so the actual point total is provided in this staff report. So Upper Cottonwood had 16, Lakeside Village had 8, Maplewood had 5. The Pollinator, or it's also referred to as the North Broadway Park, had 4, South Park had 3, Highland Park had 2, South Market had 2, and South German Park had 2. The maximum point total was 42. Then the Community Development Director, the planner, and the city engineer also voted, and our selections were identical, and they are also listed. Upper Cottonwood was 9, Maplewood 6, and South Market was 3. I might note that since the Planning Commission meeting, the Park and Recreation Commission has had some further meetings, and one of the parks they have dropped out of consideration, and that was the park that's labeled on our list as Highland. They refer to it as North Highland Park. The commission decided at the meeting on the 28th that you would not take any further action on your recommendation, so you decided not to forward it to the city council, and instead wanted to get further information from the Park and Recreation Commission on their review process. The Park and Recreation Commission held a work session on February 8th. And at that time, they finalized their selection criteria and scoring system. And they established a matrix with 3 parts: objective criteria, subjective criteria, and land questions. Then each criteria had a weighted value based on their importance, and then a ranking value. The Park and Recreation Commission formally voted to adopt this matrix at a special meeting held February 17th. And so a copy of their ranking criteria is attached with the staff report. Their scoring system primarily uses demographic data that was to be compiled by Park and Recreation Commission staff. And then there was one commission that was identified that would allow that individual commissioner to identify the park that they thought was should be selected for this purpose. The Park and Recreation staff is now in the process of securing the demographic data. Actually, the Park and Recreation staff is supervising the engineering department and the community development department in securing the demographic data. And that has been, I'd say, mostly completed. And so I think that information is going to go to the Park and Recreation Commission at their March 8th meeting. And then I think if they accept that information and they reach it, well, or they'll receive that information, then they'll consider the subject and make a recommendation to the city council, which would then be considered at the city council's March 16th meeting. So attached is a copy of their matrix criteria form. And then I included a copy of map 3. You all have seen that. That was in last month's agenda packet. Staff recommendation is the following. The Planning Commission, you're meeting today. Your March meeting is on the 25th. If the Park and Recreation Department submits a recommendation for the City Council for consideration at the meeting on March 16th, then the Commission today should make a recommendation to the City Council. I would note that, we have Tom has tabulated, I think, or inserted most of this demographic information, and so we can identify, I think, the top 3 parks. They actually came in fairly close together. They are Upper Cottonwood, Lakeside Village, and the Pollinator Park or North Broadway. But there's, I think, just that the individual commissioner vote that needs to be inserted, and that then would complete the matrix, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if Tom has any further information that he would like to supply.
Madam Chair and Planning Commissioners, Tom Schmitz, Park and Recreation Department. The Community Development Office and Planning Office has done a wonderful job presenting the packet and the information for you. I would agree it's, very accurate. One item I would like to add to that would be under the attachment section. There's number 1, number 2. The first bullet below number 2, where it talks about the park service area is approximately 1/3 of a mile. That is a radius. We're talking circles here. So it's 1/3 of a mile radius or 2/3 of a mile diameter. That's the size of our comprehensive plan park service area. So I just wanted to point that out. And so, yes, I anticipate the Park and Recreation Commission making a final decision after reviewing the results of the matrix at their next meeting on March 8th and presenting a recommendation to the council at their March 16th meeting. One additional tidbit of information I might share is that we're talking neighborhood parks here. And our comprehensive plan views a neighborhood park as being 4 to 10 acres. Now, some of these 8 areas that we are evaluating they're smaller than that, including one that you mentioned rather highly at your last meeting, Lakeside Village, at only 1.5 acres. I would more consider that to be a mini park size rather than a neighborhood park size. And as the Community Development Director mentioned, it appears that we're going to have 2 areas coming out highly in the matrix, Upper Cottonwood and North Broadway. The Upper Cottonwood area is going to have some land acquisition costs, whereas the North Broadway Pollinator Park area is going to have some site preparation, moving dirt costs. But they're both very warranted areas in our community that are vastly underserved by a neighborhood park. So I certainly would suggest consideration be given Upper Cottonwood and North Broadway. I'm here to answer any other questions you may have. I appreciate your interest and work on this, and I'm certain the City Council feels the same way.
If I could just add one more thing. I think when we did our evaluation, we did more of an evaluation of area. And so when we were looking at the Lakeside Village area, we weren't necessarily looking at that 1.5-acre park as we were looking at the entire area. And so there was another location that was in proximity. So we actually had a location that where we actually had parkland, but then there was a proposed location for another park that was in proximity to that. And I think that's what, secured some votes on the part of the commission. And I would like to point out that our evaluation process is different than the one that was done by the Park and Recreation Commission.
You mentioned 3 parks, and it didn't have Lakeside Village in it. It had Maplewood and the Pollinator Park. And I remember understanding that in the initial packet recommendation that Lakeside was not an area that they were requesting development on now at present. Is that correct? Am I misunderstanding
Well, I
that?
think, size was one of the issues with Lakeside Village, but also its proximity to, to the railroad
Right.
and to a new North Highland Avenue that's going to be constructed, or in vicinity to a new street that's going to be constructed this year. But there was the other location that's near what is going to be I expect, a growing residential area at some point in time in the future, and that was what was under consideration as well.
Okay.
Kind of a B location instead of the one that was near the tracks.
Right.
And my question to Director Schmitz is, Pollinator Park and Lakeside Village are relatively close together if you cut through the back instead of going like along Highway 29 or North Broadway. Is how outside of your radius would be from Pollinator Park would be a lakeside park?
I think they're very close, may even be within that 2/3 of a mile circle or that.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was
so
kind of
they're
wondering about
definitely
that,
in
too.
close proximity, if not within the
Yeah,
service area
Yeah.
of each other.
If you take the bike path instead of current city streets, it's probably very much within, correct?
If you look at map 3, and you look at the black circle, that's 1D, so that's Pollinator Park. And then the
red circle labeled B as in
B,
boy.
yeah, so they almost directly abut each other.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions, comments? A recommendation? Changes? Other,
Just clarification, Director Schmitz, you said that the pollinator one would require some moving of some ground to prepare it for the site, because I think I'm recalling in the notes we saw, Mr. Schnellberg, that sloped down toward the river quite a bit, or had low-lying area in it.
Yeah.
That's what you were talking about then for preparing it?
Yes,
I
yes,
see.
there would be some site prep, earth moving
Right.
needs for flat area, for playground, shelter, and open field space,
Right.
multi-purpose field space.
Yeah, I think the current site, you probably could get the shelter and the playground equipment with not a lot of trouble. An open field area, I mean,
It's pretty low.
it could be a significant cost.
and that does not disturb the gardens that are,
Right,
Currently there.
the field area would have to be on the downhill side of where that,
More adjacent to the recreational trail,
yeah.
Right.
where
Okay.
it's lower and a little bit more flat.
Tom, was there any mention for traffic there, or put a parking lot in there, or just for that area? Or where people would be exiting their vehicles to get access to the park?
Well, we don't have a park designed or, drawn out yet. There certainly is street parking on North Broadway. But off-street parking is an additional amenity. It's not a required basic amenity to a neighborhood park, such as Lincoln and Washington do not have intra-park parking.
I was just thinking, right now it's a rather busy roadway, but once the new road comes through, you know, it should bypass that, and we should be substantially a lot less vehicles going out that direction.
Yes, and
Yeah.
there certainly could be some improvements to a crosswalk or crossing between.
That is still within the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit area. I know people are driving 30
Yes.
miles. Correct. Yeah, okay.
Wide open through street, though. It's, yeah, people are used to just cruising
30.
along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there is a, you know, it's close to the trailer park there, so.
Right.
I think they do tend to slow in that area a little bit, but.
I mean, an improved crosswalk at 23rd North and Broadway would probably be a good idea.
I had the same thoughts myself, Larry, that, yeah, that's a busy street, and you know darn well people from the trailer park will cross over and want to use it, and
Plus,
likewise,
there's a lot
I,
of industry there, so people getting
Right.
off shift and on shifter.
right. I guess likewise with the Lakeside option, 23rd can be busy as well. People coming in and out of town that way.
Yes,
There'd be a lot
and
of
the
street
new,
crossing there too.
The new highway realignment.
Yeah.
Right.
Question, can you clarify for us, please? Are you looking for a recommendation of 3 parks still, or just 1 now? Like, what is the recommendation number that you're looking for us to take to city council?
I think it would be appropriate, and it's actually up to you, but I would think 3
It is 3.
would be what you would want to do, and then rank them.
Number 1, number 2, number 3. I think that's what Community Development Director is recommending.
Right.
And then my question to the community, to Dave is, the 3 recommendations, I'm going back to this, that you recommended are the Upper Cottonwood and Maplewood, not Lakeside. And Pollinator? Is that what, or why, because Lakeside is in the description, but it was Plan B on Lakeside, not
Right, it was
Plan
kind of a
A?
secondary location for
The land
Lakeside.
would have to be purchased for that.
Right, you would. But no, I think, you know, I think there were 2 that had that particular location their number 1 pick, so I think that that's still a valid consideration as far as looking at for park purposes. So if you know, the group may decide that acquiring property in Upper Cottonwood is important, but the second choice is acquiring property in the Lakeside Village area.
Okay. Or recommending 4, all 4 of the top 4 that we had picked up. Let's just make Lakeside, Maplewood, and Pollinator.
Yeah, that's true. You aren't, I
Not-
guess, bound by the top 3 if, as long as I think the city council knows what the order is that you're recommending.
Are there any other questions? Does anybody have a preference or recommendations? Is there a?
I think, for my opinion, we could nitpick this for quite a while, but really, I think the recommendations are very close to each other between the 2 committees, and I'm comfortable going with the ranking that the Planning Commission decided on. That's been reported back in today's notes of the Upper Cottonwood first, Lakeside Village second, Maplewood third. That's just me.
And Pollinator?
And Pollinator fourth, if we need a fourth, yeah. I mean, they're very close in as far as what number of votes were gotten there, so, yeah. Like I said, I'm not gonna,
Horse apiece.
right.
I could go along with that. I kind of think Upper Cottonwood, Maplewood, then Lakeside, and I'm just Upper because, you know, I think it's a priority and it's out by itself, standalone, and then the Maplewood, I just kind of thinking that area is filled up quite a bit and it's pretty underserved, I feel. But that's,
Yeah.
I think Lakeside area, you know, there's some room to grow yet and other things, so.
Personally, I would like to see either Lakeside or Pollinator stay in the top 3. Ideally, in my opinion, Pollinator, just because I think that could be a good destination with what's there. But I wouldn't vote against it.
Do I have a motion for the top 4? 3, 2, 1?
I agree we do 4, but I think we just need to shore up the order we want them in, correct? I agree with 4, but I think we just need to shore up the order that we want them in.
Do you want to make a motion with your order?
Sure. I would make a motion with the Upper Cottonwood, Pollinator, Maplewood, and Lakeside Village.
In that order? Is there a second to that motion?
I'd second that motion.
Any further discussion on the order? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Dave, would you present that, please, then to the,
Yes, so this will go to the city council for their March 16th meeting.
right,
Okay,
okay?
thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Mr. Schmitz.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay. Next order of business is status of revisions, the zoning ordinance. John?
Okay. Things are kind of at a standstill at the present time, and that is entirely because of the matter of, or the situation with the city attorney. You know, Roger Hippert is currently handling all of the responsibilities of that position. Normally, there's always been 2 attorneys that have been doing that, and so as well as operating a private practice. To get additional work like this done, just, it's not a top priority. And so as a result, we haven't been able to proceed any further. Hopefully, at the next council meeting, there'll be a decision made as to how legal services will be handled. And at that point in time, then, I don't know if it's going to be Roger or if it's going to be somebody else, but we can, identify the attorney that we will be working with, and then we can start up again. So that's kind of where we're at.
Understood.
Can I ask one question? I'm just curious, I wasn't sure with the comprehensive plan coming up that the city will be doing, does it make sense to do our city code before the comprehensive plan, or are they just, what are your thoughts with that? I didn't know, were we putting cart before the horse by doing that and have to change things later, or not necessarily?
No, that's an excellent question. We may be doing things backwards. But we've been working on the zoning ordinance for such a long period of time, and we've gotten to the point now where we want to, get it finished. So I think we'd like to push ahead with that. And then when the comprehensive plan is done, it perhaps will be necessary to go back and make some adjustments. The number, I don't know, but yeah, that's likely to happen.
Okay. City reports.
Okay, at the February 2nd meeting, they conducted a public hearing on the plat of the Airport Industrial Park 3rd Edition, and that was approved with no comments. They also, on a non-planning commission item, they approved moving forward with a deviated fixed route bus service. And that would be done in conjunction with Brown County. And so they were going to submit a plan, I believe, to MnDOT for funding to proceed with that service. And if I understand it correctly, it basically is going to run a route from the south end of town to the north end of town and back. And I guess stopping at, major points of, or businesses, as well as city facilities. There might even be some stops at, just other locations where some population would be expected to congregate. So they're So that's something that is in the works. February 16th meeting, they discussed their options for the building at 307 North Minnesota Street. You may remember at the last meeting that they had voted 3-2 to knock the building down. Upon further discussion at the February 16th meeting, they voted, I believe it was 4-1, to rehabilitate the building. So I think the building official is in the process of getting costs to do that. At that same meeting, they authorized Bolton and Mink to provide engineering services for the design of new poles in the downtown area. You may be seen stories on that in the newspaper. They authorized the signing of a purchase agreement with Streams Edge Properties, which is an LLC, and that is to facilitate the sale of the property with a legal description of Lot 1, Block 1 in Airport Industrial Park, 3rd Edition. So one of the reasons for that plat was to allow this particular sale. This particular company is with Dayton Trucking, so that's the business that would occupy that space. They now have 120 days to do their due diligence. They also authorized staff to proceed with the sale of a .23 acre parcel of property from Walmart. This is a remnant piece of property that was left from the original platting of the Walmart site, and it is located north of Barron's Boulevard. And it obviously, from its acreage size, it's fairly small. It's only 37 feet wide or 37 feet in depth and about 270 feet in width, but it's not big enough to plat or to sell from Walmart's perspective. And so it abuts property that we own for this future industrial park, and so we would like to purchase it because it helps us out from an access standpoint and both vehicular and with utilities. Then one other item that came up at the work session, they talked about the possibility of a new stormwater fee, which would function as something that would show up on everybody's utility bill. And it would pay for costs associated with both monitoring and someone inspecting the requirements that now exist for stormwater facilities. It has gone from next to nothing to being, a significant amount of legislation and rules and regulations that we need to abide by. In addition, this fee could be helpful in helping us pay for costs associated with stormwater retention facilities. When I first started work for the city of New Ulm, the major concern when it came to development was where's the water, where's the sanitary sewer, and what does it cost to extend it to a property? That's not the case anymore. Now it's how do I deal with stormwater from my site? And that now has become a very major expense when you look at developing property. So this type of fund could help serve, that purpose in helping to install some of these facilities. Might allow us to go to regional ponds, which is preferable to having these small individual ponds on a, property owner basis that we currently are seeing more of. one other thing that I wanted to mention, and this is something that was discussed 2 meetings ago, and that was the issue of traffic up on North Highland Avenue. And I just wanted to say that, the reason we have that traffic is because of the high school. And so, in a community this size, wherever that high school is located, there's going to be a traffic problem. It goes with the use. And we had a traffic problem down on 4th South and Payne Street in that area. And now that traffic problem has simply moved, and if we move the school someplace else, there'd be a traffic problem over there. Now, it is true that this site maybe doesn't have all of the means of access when it's entirely built out that, a more typical site would have, but I just think it's in a community this size, it's just a problem that we're going to have, unfortunately.
Kind of on the opposite end, I can attest to how much less traffic is down along Garden Street when I drop my kids off at the middle school now.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
Payne Street is still a congested,
Yeah,
double
you're right.
parking
Yeah.
nightmare. I know I have to time when I'm going to visit my mother down there because it's difficult to drive sometimes. They double park. And
Yeah.
It is what it is. It's just, so.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, Heritage Preservation Commission.
No items.
No items, okay. Is there any other business to come before the commission?
I just have one question. That doesn't have to be now, but at some point, can we explain what the Heritage Preservation Commission is, or can you guys tell me later? Since there hasn't been a report since I've been here, and I don't really know what they do.
Fair
But it
question.
doesn't have to be today, because I know it's 5:46.
Well, if we've got the answer.
Hello, Zabo, building official. Yeah, the Heritage Preservation deals with the downtown historical district mainly. If somebody's coming in and wanting to do a project on the facade of the building, changing colors, putting up signs, revamping it in some way, shape or form, we have a design guidelines for the downtown district that they had to adhere to. You have to come in front of the HPC, present that to the commission, and they decide whether it goes along with the guidelines. So, and then there's other spots around town that if something comes up with it, we can deal with that too, but really that's, the downtown design guidelines are really the main focus of this. So,
Run into some issues with looking at sites like Where's Your Chimney, so things like that get looked at occasionally. Herman Heights, any historically significant projects, anything on the Historical National Register, that kind of, so the Soffert homes, we would get questions about, can I put an air conditioner on the exterior of the building, things like that. It's just,
And maybe note that it goes from third north to first south.
Fourth
Correct.
North.
Fourth north.
Fourth north.
right.
The city's historical district goes from fourth to first south.
Right,
The
business
National Registry is,
third.
well, includes George's on Third, and then goes down to just shy of the Beckerai. Cuts off there.
Alleys are included, in this because alleys are becoming significant ways, so.
I would also note, though, that the HPC also is the agency that can initiate the designation of new historical properties. And so if there is a location that someone feels meets those standards, that can be nominated, and the HPC then would be the first step in that approval process.
Example, State Street Theater was that has, the whole building was put on the National Register to get tax credits. That was the significance of doing that, also to preserve the significant parts of that building. They've looked at the Emerson School, or is it Emerson?
Franklin School.
Franklin School, different. don't meet very often, probably.
Well, it
Yeah,
all
it
depends
is
on
what
what's
it is.
going on there. For a while, it was every month was something was coming
Right.
up. It's just nobody's doing anything right at the moment.
The biggest thing of significance for it was probably the Coleman House, when the bank wanted to build that was the instance with that. So,
All right.
any other questions? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.